By the time Ethan lifted his hand for a glass of champagne, he believed his old life was already buried. He was standing inside one of the most expensive hotels in Chicago, under a ceiling of crystal chandeliers, surrounded by white roses, polished silver, and guests who spoke in the quiet voices of people used to money. Beside him stood Isabella, the beautiful daughter of a wealthy real estate family, wearing a wedding dress that looked as if it had been made for a woman who had never been asked to beg for love. Ethan smiled like a man who had finally outsmarted the world. In Seattle, his wife was supposed to be waiting for him to return from London. That was the story he had told her. A 3-month consulting opportunity, a temporary sacrifice, one more difficult season before the life he had promised her finally began. And because Maya had believed in him for years, because she had sacrificed so much, that doubt felt like an insult to her own past. She had believed that story too. At least, that was what Ethan thought. He did not notice the woman in the server's uniform moving through the crowd with a silver tray in her hands. He did not look closely at the quiet waitress offering champagne to the guests who had come to watch him marry another woman. He did not imagine that the person he had erased from his new life had walked straight into the center of it. Then the waitress stopped in front of him. Ethan reached for a glass, still wearing that practiced, charming smile. And when he looked up, the smile died on his face. Maya stood there in a black catering uniform, her hair pinned neatly back, her eyes calm in a way that frightened him more than tears ever could have. She did not slap him. She did not scream. She did not collapse. She simply placed the tray down, turned toward the bride, the families, the guests, and the room full of people who believed Ethan was an honorable man. Then she told them who she was. She was Maya, and she was still Ethan's legal wife. To understand why that moment was not revenge but survival, you have to go back to the beginning, before the hotel, before the wedding, before the white roses and the champagne. You have to go back to Seattle, to a small apartment with rain on the windows, unpaid bills on the kitchen table, and a woman who kept mistaking sacrifice for love. Maya had not always been the kind of woman who would walk into a wedding to expose the truth. For most of her life, she was gentle in the way hard-working people often are gentle. She gave others the benefit of the doubt. She listened before she judged. She believed that if you loved someone enough, if you stood beside them long enough, if you helped them through their worst seasons, they would eventually become the person they had promised to be. She was a freelance graphic designer when she first met Ethan. She was not rich, but she was talented, disciplined, and quietly ambitious. Her apartment was small, but her desk was always full of color samples, sketches, branding concepts, half-finished logos, and notebooks filled with plans. She wanted to earn a master's degree in design, then one day open a creative studio of her own. It was not a vague dream. Maya had numbers written down, tuition estimates, application deadlines, possible scholarships, client targets. She had a folder on her laptop labeled Future Studio, and inside it were brand names she had invented at midnight, mock websites she had built for practice, and a simple line she had typed at the top of one document: "I want to make beautiful things and build a life that belongs to me." Then Ethan came into that life like a spotlight. He was handsome in the effortless way that made people forgive him too quickly. He had warm eyes, a bright smile, and the kind of voice that made every plan sound possible. He spoke about business ideas as if success were just one meeting away. He talked about investment, travel, growth, partnerships, expansion, all the shining words that sound impressive when someone says them with enough confidence. When he looked at Maya, he made her feel seen, not just admired, but chosen. He noticed when she was tired. He praised her work. He told her she had the kind of talent people would one day regret ignoring. He would show up with coffee when she was working late and tell her that she deserved more than small clients and overdue invoices. He said that one day, when his own business took off, He would make sure she never had to struggle again. Maya's mother saw through him almost immediately. Her mother was not cruel, and she was not the type to interfere just because she disliked someone. She had lived long enough to know the difference between a man who was building something and a man who was only performing ambition. Ethan, to her, was always performing. His plans were detailed when he was asking for help and blurry when anyone asked for results. His confidence appeared when someone else was paying the price. His charm grew strongest whenever he needed to escape accountability. She warned Maya more than once, gently at first, then with the tired honesty of a mother who could see her daughter walking toward a cliff. She told Maya that Ethan did not love her as deeply as she thought. He loved what Maya could do for him. He loved her patience, her talent, her savings, her forgiveness. He loved the shelter she provided while calling it partnership. But Maya was young, and Ethan had already learned where to press. He told her that her mother did not understand him. He said people had doubted him all his life. He said Maya was the only person who truly believed in him, and that if she gave up too, it would prove everyone right. So Maya stayed. At first, the sacrifices were small enough to excuse. A dinner paid for because Ethan had forgotten his wallet. A rent payment covered because one of his clients had delayed a transfer. A laptop repair loaned because he needed it for a presentation that could change everything. Each request came wrapped in apology, urgency, and a promise. He never asked as if he were taking. He asked as if Maya were investing in their future. Then came the first sacrifice that should have changed everything. Maya had spent years saving for graduate school. She had taken on extra design jobs, skipped vacations, stretched groceries, and kept using an old phone with a cracked screen because every dollar mattered. When the acceptance email finally arrived, she cried alone in her apartment, not because she had made it, but because for the first time in years, her dream felt real enough to touch. 2 weeks later, Ethan told her he was in trouble. He said he owed money from a business deal that had gone wrong. He said if he could not pay immediately, he would lose a major opportunity and possibly face legal consequences. He looked frightened, not embarrassed, not irresponsible, but frightened in a way that made Maya's heart twist. He told her he had no one else. He told her he hated asking. He told her that once the deal turned around, he would repay every cent and put her through school himself. Maya stared at the number he needed. It was almost exactly the amount she had saved for tuition. There are moments in life when a person hears the truth inside themselves before they are ready to obey it. Maya heard it then. She knew somewhere beneath love and fear and loyalty that giving him that money would cost her more than dollars. It would cost her timing. It would cost her momentum. It would cost the version of herself she had been trying so hard to become. But Ethan was shaking. Ethan was apologizing. Ethan was telling her that this was the last time. So Maya transferred the money. She told herself love sometimes meant stepping back so someone else could stand. She told herself graduate school could wait 1 year. She told herself Ethan's success would become their success. And when he finally made it, no one would remember who had paid for the first step. Her mother remembered. When Maya finally admitted what she had done, her mother sat very still at the kitchen table. She did not shout. That made it worse. She looked at her daughter with a kind of sorrow that felt older than anger. She told Maya that helping a man stand was one thing. Letting him lie down on top of her, sacrifices, was another. Maya cried after that conversation, but she still defended Ethan. She said he was under pressure. She said he had potential. She said every great person needed someone who believed in them before the rest of the world did. And maybe that was true. But Ethan did not need someone to believe in him. He needed someone to fund the illusion of who he pretended to be. When Maya married him, she believed they were becoming a team. She imagined difficult years, yes, but honest ones. She imagined 2 people working late, eating cheap dinners, encouraging each other, falling asleep exhausted, but proud because they were building something together. Instead, marriage made the imbalance permanent. Maya worked constantly. During the day, she designed brand packages for small businesses. At night, she edited menus for restaurants, social media graphics for salons, event posters for people who needed them yesterday and paid late. She learned to answer client emails with one eye open. She learned to stretch her wrists when they went numb from too many hours at the computer. She learned to smile through calls because sounding tired could cost her work. Ethan, meanwhile, remained on the edge of greatness. That was how he described it. Always close, always almost there. A startup that needed one more investor, a consulting contract delayed by paperwork, a partnership that fell through because someone else lacked vision, a business trip that was canceled at the last minute because the client changed direction. Every failure had a reason, and none of those reasons were Ethan. When bills arrived, Maya paid them. When debt collectors called, Maya answered. When Ethan needed a new suit for a meeting, Maya put it on her credit card. When he needed money to impress potential partners, Maya told herself appearances mattered in business. And when she hesitated, he turned wounded. He would remind her of everything they had promised each other. He would tell her she was the only stable thing in his life. He would say that if she stopped believing now, all their sacrifices would have been for nothing. That was the sentence that trapped her most. All their sacrifices. As if the weight had ever been shared. Ethan's mother made it worse. She treated Maya's exhaustion like a failure of devotion. She said men with big dreams needed supportive wives. She said Ethan had always been special, always meant for more, and Maya should be grateful to stand beside a man with ambition. Whenever Maya tried to explain that she was tired, that the bills were crushing her, that Ethan needed to take steady work, even temporarily, his mother made it sound as if Maya were small-minded. A good wife, she implied, did not count receipts. So Maya stopped counting out loud. But her body counted. It counted the skipped meals when money was tight. It counted the headaches behind her eyes. It counted every time she woke at 3 in the morning with her laptop still open and her neck stiff from sleeping at the desk. It counted the clients she took even when she knew they would drain her, because rent did not care about burnout. It counted the dreams she postponed until postponing became a habit. The first sign of betrayal came as a scent. Ethan came home late one night wearing a fragrance Maya did not own. It was delicate, expensive floral, and it clung to his shirt when he leaned past her in the kitchen. She noticed it immediately, but she said nothing at first. She watched him open the refrigerator, complain that there was no real food, and ask whether she had finished the invoice he needed sent to a contact. The second sign was a lipstick stain, faint enough for him to deny, clear enough for her to stare at, until her stomach turned cold. When she asked, Ethan became angry before he became innocent. That was one of his habits. He would attack the accusation so fiercely that Maya felt guilty for making it. He said she was insecure. He said she was exhausted and imagining things. He said no man could succeed while being interrogated in his own home. He reminded her that he was trying to build a future for them, and asked why she seemed determined to poison it. Maya apologized. It shamed her later, but at the time apology felt safer than truth. Because if Ethan was cheating, then the problem was not one late night or one strange perfume. If Ethan was cheating, then every sacrifice Maya had made would have to be re-examined. The tuition money, the unpaid invoices, the years of defending him. The mornings she told her mother not to worry. The nights she lay beside him pretending she could not feel the distance between them. Sometimes people do not ignore warning signs because they are blind. Sometimes they ignore them because seeing clearly would require them to grieve the person they have been trying to save. So Maya kept working. She kept believing in the version of Ethan that appeared whenever he needed forgiveness. The soft-voiced Ethan, the apologetic Ethan, the Ethan who touched her shoulder while she washed dishes and said he knew things had been hard, but he was close. So close, and one day she would understand why he had needed her patience. Then came London. One rainy morning, Ethan walked into the kitchen with the bright, restless energy he always had when a new story was ready. He said he had received a major consulting opportunity overseas, 3 months in London, high-level clients, serious money, the kind of work that could finally open the doors he had been waiting for. Maya stood at the counter with wet hands and listened as he described it. He spoke quickly, beautifully, painting the picture before she could examine the frame. He said he hated leaving her, but this was for them. He said after this trip he would repay what he owed. He said she could go back to school. He said they could move into a better apartment, maybe even start her studio. He knew exactly which promises still had power. Maya helped him pack. That detail stayed with her later more than almost anything else. She folded his shirts carefully because she did not want them to wrinkle. She placed cold medicine in his suitcase because he always forgot practical things. She tucked one of their wedding photos into an inside pocket, a small one from the courthouse steps where she was smiling with her whole face, and Ethan looked like a man proud to be loved by her. At the airport, he kissed her forehead and told her to be strong. She watched him walk away until the crowd swallowed him. She did not know he was not flying to London. He was flying to Chicago. In Chicago, Ethan became the man he had always wanted strangers to believe he was. He wore expensive suits bought with Maya's money. He stayed in places he could barely afford, then shifted the pressure back to Seattle by claiming international banking issues. He spoke about foreign clients, investment networks, and expansion plans. He learned the names of restaurants where wealthy people ate and repeated them casually as if they were part of his regular life. And then he met Isabella. Isabella was not foolish. That mattered. She was educated, poised, and careful in most areas of her life. But Ethan understood something about people who grow up protected by status. They are often trained to recognize obvious hunger, but not emotional performance. Ethan did not approach Isabella like a desperate man looking for money. He approached her like someone who already belonged near it. He told her he had lived abroad. He told her he was between major projects. He told her he valued privacy, which explained why he had little online presence connected to his supposed success. He told her he had no family obligations that mattered. He told her he had never met the right woman until her. The lies were not wild enough to collapse under their own weight. They were smooth, measured, flattering. He made Isabella feel as if she had discovered a brilliant man before the rest of her world noticed him. And because her family had money, because her father knew investors and developers and lawyers, Ethan saw not a bride, but an elevator. Back in Seattle, Maya kept paying. At first, Ethan called regularly. He described London weather, London meetings, London delays. He complained about time zones and hotel fees. He said one payment had been frozen because of an account verification issue, then another. Then a short-term loan was needed to secure a contract. Maya sent money she did not have, borrowing from one credit line to pay another, telling herself this was the final stretch. The calls became shorter. The messages became polished, almost formal. Sometimes he sent photos, but never of himself clearly in London. A coffee cup near a window, a hotel lobby that could have been anywhere, a blurred street at night. Maya noticed, but she buried the noticing under fatigue. Her mother did not. Maya's mother had stopped arguing by then, not because she approved, but because she understood that warnings can become walls when someone is not ready to hear them. Instead, she watched. She asked gentle questions. She brought food over when Maya forgot to eat. She sat in the apartment sometimes and quietly cleaned the kitchen while Maya worked, because love, real love, often looks less like speeches and more like doing the dishes when someone is too tired to stand. The truth arrived through a coincidence so small it almost felt impossible. One of Maya's mother's old friends worked as a wedding photographer in Chicago. She had been hired to assist with coverage for a high-profile hotel wedding, the kind where every vendor received digital schedules, reference photos, and strict instructions about timing. While reviewing the details, she noticed the groom's face. His name was Ethan. The bride was Isabella. At first, the photographer only felt a tug of recognition. She had seen that man before in photos Maya's mother had shown her, back when Maya was newly married and still smiling like sacrifice had not yet started taking pieces from her. She zoomed in on the image. Same face, same smile, same careful confidence. She sent the invitation screenshot to Maya's mother with one question. "Isn't this your daughter's husband?" Maya's mother stared at the phone for a long time before she moved. She did not want the image to be real. No mother wants to be right about the thing that will break her child. She checked the date, the hotel, the names. She called her friend, asked for every detail she could safely share, then drove to Maya's apartment with the screenshot open on her phone like evidence of a crime. Maya was working when her mother arrived. Her desk lamp was on, even though it was afternoon, because Seattle had gone gray with rain. There were empty coffee cups near her keyboard and a stack of unpaid bills beneath a notebook. She looked up, smiled tiredly, and asked if everything was okay. Her mother did not answer right away. She placed the phone in front of Maya. For a moment, Maya did not understand what she was seeing. A wedding invitation. White and gold lettering. A glamorous hotel in Chicago. Isabella's name beside Ethan's. A photo of Ethan in a white suit standing with his arm around a woman who looked radiant, certain, adored. Maya laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the mind sometimes rejects pain before it can absorb it. She said, there had to be another Ethan. Then she saw the small scar near his eyebrow, the one he had gotten years earlier. She saw the watch on his wrist, the same watch she had helped pay for after he insisted it was necessary for business meetings. She saw his smile, the one he used whenever he wanted people to see success and not the debt behind it. The room seemed to narrow around her. Her mother reached for her hand, but Maya pulled away, not in anger, only because touch would have made the truth too real. She stood up, sat down, opened her laptop, searched the hotel, searched Isabella's family, searched Ethan's name beside Chicago, and found almost nothing, which somehow made it worse. He had built a new life so carefully that Maya existed in none of it. That night, Maya cried until her face hurt. She cried for the marriage, yes, but also for the woman she had been inside it. The woman folding shirts for a London trip that did not exist. The woman sending money to a husband, using her exhaustion to court another bride. The woman defending him to her mother, to herself, to every quiet instinct that had tried to protect her. Grief came first, then shame, then anger. But by morning, something steadier had risen underneath all of it. Maya did not want Ethan back. That realization surprised her with its clarity. She did not want him to explain. She did not want him to choose her. She did not want to compete with Isabella or plead for the value of her own years. The moment she saw that invitation, something inside her stopped negotiating. She wanted the truth to stand in the room he had built out of lies. So she prepared. She printed their marriage certificate. She found bank records, transfer confirmations, loan documents, screenshots of messages where Ethan claimed to be in London, and copies of the payments he had requested while preparing to marry Isabella. She contacted a lawyer for an emergency consultation. She prepared divorce documents as far as she legally could. She made copies of everything and placed them in a plain folder. Her mother offered to go with her. Maya almost said yes. She wanted to be someone's daughter for a little longer. She wanted to lean into the one person who had seen the danger before she did. But in the end, she told her mother she had to do this herself, not because she was alone, because she was done being carried by other people's warnings. This time she would walk toward the truth with her own feet. The flight to Chicago felt unreal. Maya sat by the window with a folder in her bag, and watched the clouds move beneath the plane like a world that had stopped belonging to her. Around her, people slept, watched movies, ordered drinks, lived ordinary lives. She wondered how many women had sat on planes like that, traveling not toward a person, but toward the end of an illusion. When she landed, she did not go straight to the hotel. She went to a small cafe nearby, ordered tea she barely touched, and reviewed the documents again. Her hands were steady until she reached the wedding photo she had removed from Ethan's old suitcase months earlier to dust the closet. In it, he looked young and convincing. She looked hopeful. For a moment, she hated that younger version of herself. Then she stopped. That woman had loved honestly. That woman had worked hard. That woman had believed because she had a heart capable of loyalty. Ethan's betrayal did not make Maya's love foolish. It made his use of it unforgivable. The next morning, Maya entered the hotel through the service side. Her mother's photographer friend had helped her connect with a catering supervisor who needed temporary staff for the event. Maya did not lie about having experience. She had worked events in college, carrying trays and clearing tables before design clients began to pay her bills. The uniform fit well enough. Black shirt, black pants, apron, hair pinned back, face neutral. It was strange how invisible she became. Guests walked past her without seeing her. Men in tailored suits lifted glasses from her tray without meeting her eyes. Women in silk dresses asked for directions, as if Maya had no life outside the hallway. For years, Ethan had treated her sacrifices as invisible. Now, invisibility became the very thing that allowed her to reach him. The ballroom was beautiful in a way that almost offended her. White roses climbed the aisle. Candles flickered in glass cylinders. The chairs were arranged in perfect rows, each tied with pale ribbon. A string quartet played softly near the front. Everything smelled like money flowers and polished wood. On a table near the entrance, a framed photo of Ethan and Isabella welcomed guests to celebrate their love story. Maya stood in front of that photo for 3 seconds longer than a server should have. Ethan looked effortless. Isabella looked happy. Maya felt no hatred toward her. That surprised her too. She had imagined during the worst moments of the night before that seeing Isabella would hurt like a blade. But when she saw the bride laughing with her bridesmaids touching her veil with nervous fingers, Maya did not see an enemy. She saw another woman standing inside Ethan's lie. Isabella did not know she was being used. She did not know the man waiting for her at the altar had a wife in Seattle who had paid for the suit he was wearing. She did not know the charming stories about London and business and destiny were stitched together from borrowed money and erased truth. She did not know that the future she was walking toward had already been built on another woman's ruin. That knowledge changed Maya's anger. It sharpened it, but it also cleaned it. She was not there to destroy Isabella's wedding for the pleasure of watching another woman suffer. She was there because letting the ceremony continue would make her part of the silence that had trapped her. And Maya had been silent long enough. Ethan entered the ballroom like a man accepting applause before it was given. He greeted guests with confidence. He shook hands with Isabella's father. He smiled at relatives who had flown in from other states. He carried himself with the relaxed pride of someone who believed the hardest part was over. Every lie had held. Every question had been avoided. Every loose end had stayed far away in Seattle. Then he saw Maya. It happened just before the ceremony was meant to begin. Maya was carrying champagne along the side of the room. Ethan was speaking to a group of guests near the front, laughing softly, one hand tucked into his pocket. He turned to take a glass. Their eyes met. For 1 second he looked blank, as if his mind refused to place her in that room. Then recognition hit. His face drained of color so quickly that one of the guests beside him asked if he was all right. Maya held the tray steady. That steadiness was the first thing that frightened him. Ethan knew how to manage tears. He knew how to twist anger. He knew how to make Maya doubt herself when she was emotional. But this version of Maya, silent and composed in a server's uniform, was someone he had never prepared for. He stepped toward her and lowered his voice, trying to say her name like a warning. Maya moved past him. The room was still full of soft music and conversation. Isabella was near the aisle, moments away from walking into the ceremony. The officiant was checking notes. The photographer was adjusting position. Ethan reached for Maya's arm, but she turned just enough to make the gesture visible to the people nearby. He let go immediately. That was the thing about men like Ethan. They were bold in private and careful in public. Maya walked to the front of the room. She placed the champagne tray on a table. The small sound of glass against wood was not loud, but in her memory it became the sound of a door closing. A few people glanced over, then more. Ethan whispered something behind her, his voice tight now, but Maya did not turn around. She faced Isabella first, then the families, then the guests. Her voice did not shake when she apologized for interrupting. She said her name was Maya. She said she was Ethan's legal wife. She said they had never divorced. At first, the room did not react. Not truly. There was a pause, a strange, suspended moment when the words seemed too impossible to enter the air. Then whispers began moving through the guests like wind through dry leaves. Someone gasped. Someone laughed nervously, thinking perhaps this was a mistake or a prank or a deranged interruption. Isabella stood frozen, her bouquet held at her waist, her eyes locked on Ethan. Ethan recovered just enough to lie. He said Maya was unstable. He said she was someone from his past. He said there had been confusion, paperwork, an old relationship she had never accepted. He tried to move toward Isabella as he spoke, because his instinct was always to reach the person whose belief he needed most. Maya opened the folder. She did not argue with his insults. She did not raise her voice to match his panic. She simply removed the marriage certificate and held it where Isabella could see it. Then she placed copies of the documents on the table nearest the bride's family. Names, dates, signatures, records, proof that did not tremble. The room changed. It was not loud at first. It was colder than loud. Ethan's words began to lose their shape in the face of paper. Isabella's father stepped forward and picked up one of the documents. His expression hardened as he read. Isabella's mother covered her mouth. The officiant stepped back. The photographer lowered the camera. Maya explained only what needed to be explained. Ethan had told her he was in London. During that time, he had asked her for money repeatedly. He had claimed banking issues, contract delays, emergency expenses. She had sent the payments because she believed he was working for their future. She had not come to humiliate the bride. She had come so Isabella could know who she was about to marry. That was the sentence that finally broke Isabella's stillness. She looked at Maya, then really looked at her, not at the uniform, not at the interruption, at the tiredness around her eyes, at the folder in her hands, at the controlled grief of a woman who had already spent the night collapsing and had arrived only after rebuilding herself enough to stand. Something passed between them that Ethan could not touch. Recognition. Ethan tried again. He said Isabella should not listen. He said Maya had always been jealous. He said money had made her bitter. He said the marriage was over in every way that mattered. But every sentence made him smaller. He was no longer the polished consultant, the international businessman, the romantic groom. He was a man surrounded by his own contradictions, trying to shout over documents. Isabella removed her engagement ring. She did it slowly, not dramatically. That made it worse for Ethan. A dramatic gesture might have given him something to fight, but Isabella's calm was final. She placed the ring on the table beside the marriage certificate. Then she ended the wedding. 4 words spoken without tears destroyed the life Ethan had tried to steal. The ballroom erupted after that, but not in the way Ethan expected. No one rushed to comfort him. No one demanded that Maya leave. The sympathy moved toward Isabella, then toward the truth, then away from Ethan, as if the room itself could no longer bear to stand near him. Isabella's father spoke to hotel security. Her mother gathered the bridesmaids. Guests began checking their phones, whispering, staring, piecing together the scandal, while Ethan stood in the center of it with no role left to play. He had imagined entering wealth through marriage. Instead, he entered exposure. When he finally turned back to Maya, his face had changed. The arrogance was gone, but not because remorse had arrived. It was fear, pure fear. Fear of consequences, fear of losing Isabella's money, fear of what her family might do, fear of the guests who had seen him unmasked, fear of the wife he had mistaken for too loving to resist. He begged then, not loudly, not at first. He lowered his voice and tried to draw Maya aside. He said they could talk. He said she had made her point. He said she did not understand the pressure he had been under. He said he had gotten carried away. He said he still loved her. That word love sounded different now. For years, Maya had treated it like a key. If Ethan said he loved her, she opened the door again. If he said he loved her, she softened. If he said he loved her, she searched for the wounded part of him and ignored the wound he had made in her. But in that ballroom, love sounded like a tool he had worn smooth from overuse. Maya removed another set of papers from the folder, the divorce documents. Of all the things Ethan expected, that was not one of them. He had expected tears, rage, maybe a public accusation he could later dismiss as hysteria. He had not expected Maya to arrive prepared to end the marriage he had already abandoned in secret. She placed the papers in front of him. Her voice stayed quiet. She told him he had made her sign for too many debts, too many sacrifices, too many years of pain. Today he would sign for her freedom. The people close enough to hear went silent again. Ethan stared at the papers as if they were more frightening than the marriage certificate. Exposure was one thing, finality was another. For years, Maya had been his safety net. Even when he cheated, even when he lied, even when he disappeared into new versions of himself somewhere in Seattle, there had always been Maya, working, paying, waiting, forgiving. Signing those papers meant losing not just a wife, but the person who had absorbed the cost of his failures. He said this was not the time. Maya told him it was exactly the time. He said they needed lawyers. She told him lawyers could handle the rest, but his signature today would prove he understood the marriage was over. He looked around the room for help and found none. Isabella's family watched with open disgust. The guests watched with the fascinated horror people reserve for a man whose mask has fallen in public. Hotel security stood nearby. Even his own confidence had deserted him. His hand shook when he took the pen. Maya watched him sign, not because the signature solved every legal issue, not because one piece of paper could repay years of labor debt and humiliation, but because it marked the first time in their marriage that Ethan had put his name on the cost of what he had done. When he finished, Maya gathered the papers. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. The victory was too heavy for that. She turned to Isabella, who was standing a few feet away, without her ring, still in the dress chosen for a future that had just been canceled. Maya felt the ache of that, even through her own pain. She knew what it was to grieve a man who had never existed in the way she believed. She knew the humiliation of realizing your tenderness had been used as material for someone else's performance. Maya told Isabella she was sorry she had been pulled into it. Isabella looked at her for a long moment. Then she thanked her, not for the embarrassment, not for the ruined flowers, the canceled meal, the stunned guests, or the photographs that would never become wedding memories. She thanked Maya for arriving before the vows, before the legal tie, before children shared property, deeper debts, and years of trying to save a man who knew exactly how to make women feel responsible for his emptiness. In that moment, They were not rivals. They were survivors, standing on opposite sides of the same lie. Ethan tried to speak to Isabella, but her father stepped between them. That was when Ethan understood something final. The doors he had tried to enter were closing, not gently, not temporarily, closing with lawyers behind them, with family power behind them, with witnesses behind them. The wealth he had chased had seen him clearly, and it wanted nothing to do with him. Maya walked out of the ballroom through the same service path she had used to enter. No one stopped her. The hotel hallway was cooler than the ballroom. The noise faded behind her. Her shoes hurt. Her throat burned. Her hands, steady for so long, began to tremble once she reached the side exit. Outside, Chicago air struck her face, sharp and alive. For a few seconds, she stood there beside the building, still in the server's uniform, holding the folder against her chest. Then she began to walk. She did not know the city well, but she knew the river was close. She followed the movement of people, the shine between buildings, the wind that seemed to carry water through the streets. By the time she reached the Riverwalk, the afternoon had shifted toward evening. Light moved across the surface of the Chicago River in broken pieces. Maya sat on a bench and finally took off her wedding ring. It did not come off easily at first. Her finger had grown used to it. That, too, felt like a kind of truth. Some things stay on us long after they stop fitting. She twisted it gently, feeling the small resistance of skin, memory, and years. When the ring came free, she held it in her palm. It looked smaller than it should have. Too small to represent everything it had cost. Too small for the nights she had stayed awake working while Ethan slept. Too small for the graduate program she had lost. Too small for the money wired to fake emergencies, the apologies she made for asking reasonable questions. The warnings she had resented because they were true. She remembered the day he put it on her finger. She had believed that marriage meant two people choosing each other in public and protecting each other in private. She had not understood then that some people enjoy the appearance of commitment while avoiding every responsibility inside it. Ethan had wanted the loyalty of a wife, the freedom of a single man, and the rescue of a mother he could manipulate whenever consequences came too close. Maya closed her hand around the ring. She did not throw it into the river immediately. She let herself feel the grief without rushing it into symbolism. She allowed herself to mourn the years because freedom does not erase the cost of captivity. She allowed herself to miss the man she had imagined, even though that man had never truly existed. She allowed herself to be angry, not just at Ethan, but at every moment she had abandoned her own instincts to protect his comfort. Then she stood. She threw the ring into the water. It vanished without ceremony. No thunder, no music, no instant healing. Just a small circle of metal disappearing beneath the surface, leaving ripples that widened, softened, and were carried away. Maya called her mother. When her mother answered, she did not ask for details first. She heard Maya breathing and waited. Maya said only that she was free. On the other end of the line, her mother began to cry. Those tears were not only relief, they were grief for what Maya had endured, sorrow for the warnings that had gone unheard, gratitude that her daughter had survived the truth, and the quiet joy of a mother hearing a child return to herself. Maya flew back to Seattle the next day. The apartment had not changed. That almost offended her at first. The same narrow kitchen, the same old desk, the same stack of client notes, the same rain marks on the window. After everything that had happened, part of her expected the place to look different, as if truth should rearrange furniture. But healing often begins in rooms that look exactly like the ones where we were hurt. Maya stood in the doorway for a long time. Ethan's things were still there in fragments. A jacket he had not packed, old receipts, a drawer full of tangled chargers, business cards from companies that had never called him back. She did not tear through them in a rage. She got boxes. She sorted carefully. His belongings went into one pile, financial documents into another, evidence for the lawyer into a third. With each drawer she emptied, the apartment became less haunted. Her mother came over with soup and cleaning supplies. This time Maya did not argue when she started washing dishes. They worked quietly together for most of the afternoon. Every so often Maya would find something that hurt. An anniversary card, a photo from a trip, a note Ethan had written during one of his apology phases. Some she threw away. Some she placed in a folder for later. Not because she wanted to keep loving him, but because she understood grief cannot always be managed in one day. Ethan called that evening, then again. Then again. Maya did not answer. His messages moved through predictable stages. First, outrage. How could she embarrass him? How could she ruin his life? Then, blame. She had always doubted him. She had pushed him into desperation. Then, softness. He missed her. He was confused. He had made mistakes. Then, fear. Isabella's family was threatening legal action. People were talking. He needed help. That last word almost made her laugh. Help. For years, help had been the bridge he walked across to take more from her. Help had cost Maya her savings, her sleep, her confidence, her education, and nearly her sense of self. But now the bridge was gone. She forwarded the messages to her lawyer. Then she blocked him. Ethan did lose almost everything he had tried to gain. Isabella's family cut him off immediately. The business contacts he had collected through them stopped answering. The hotel incident spread quietly through the circles he had tried to enter, because wealthy families may keep scandals discreet, but they do not forget humiliation. Doors closed before he could knock. Promises he had made were examined. Stories he had told began to unravel. His mother called Maya too. At first she demanded to know how Maya could destroy her son. Maya listened for less than a minute before realizing the old guilt no longer worked. The woman who had once told Maya that good wives sacrificed was now defending a man who had tried to commit a second marriage while his first wife paid his bills. Maya ended the call. She did not need to convince everyone. That was one of the freedoms she had not expected. For years, she had tried to explain, justify, prove, soften, defend. She had carried not only the burden of Ethan's behavior, but the responsibility of making other people understand it. After Chicago, she stopped auditioning her pain for people committed to misunderstanding it. The legal process was not simple, but it moved. There were debts to separate accounts to examine, signatures to challenge, and financial damage to untangle. Some days Maya felt strong. Other days she felt humiliated all over again while reading through statements that showed exactly how much of her labor had been converted into Ethan's image. There were charges for restaurants he had never taken her to, hotel deposits, clothing stores, transfers made during the supposed London trip. Proof is powerful, but it is also painful. It shows not just that you were betrayed, but how carefully the betrayal was organized. Maya kept going. She took breaks when she needed to. She accepted help from her mother. She told 2 close friends the truth and discovered that love, real love, does not ask for a performance. They did not tell her she should have known. They did not make her pain into gossip. They sat with her, brought groceries, helped her update passwords, and reminded her to sleep. Slowly, her life began returning to her in pieces. The first piece was her work. At first, sitting at the desk felt impossible. That desk had become a symbol of exhaustion, the place where she had worked to keep a marriage alive while Ethan built an escape route. But then, a small bakery client asked if she was available for a rebrand. Maya almost declined. She had no energy for cheerful colors and menu layouts. But she needed money, and more than that, she needed to remember that her talent existed outside survival. So she opened a blank file. For a long time, she only stared at it. Then she chose a color. That one small choice broke something open. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. She designed a logo that was warm, simple, and better than anything she had made during the months when fear had drained every creative instinct from her. The client loved it, paid on time, recommended her to someone else. Work became hers again, not Ethan's emergency fund, not the engine of his illusions. Hers. Then came the second piece. Graduate school. The application portal was still there. New deadlines, new requirements, new tuition numbers higher than before. For a moment, Maya felt the old grief rise. She thought of the years she had lost, then the years after that, all the time poured into a man who had treated her dreams as flexible and his desires as urgent. But this time, she did not close the laptop. She emailed the admissions office. She explained that she wanted to reapply. She gathered her portfolio. She updated the work samples that still felt strong and replaced the ones that belonged to a version of her trying too hard to please invisible clients. In her statement, she did not write the whole story of Ethan. She did not need to. She wrote about resilience, design, identity, and the importance of building visual systems that help people feel seen. When she submitted the application, she cried again. But those tears were different. They were not the tears of a woman discovering betrayal. They were the tears of someone knocking on the door of her own future after years of standing outside it. Isabella reached out once. The message came through social media several weeks after the wedding that never happened. It was brief, careful, and kind. Isabella said she did not want to intrude, but she wanted Maya to know that her family had taken legal steps where appropriate, and that Ethan would not be able to use their name or contacts again. She also thanked Maya again for telling the truth before it was too late. Maya read the message several times before replying. She wished Isabella healing. She told her she was sorry for the pain of that day. She said neither of them had deserved to be lied to. They did not become instant friends. Life is not always that neat. But there was comfort in knowing that Ethan had failed at one more thing he had tried to do. He had tried to make women strangers to each other so he could control the story between them. Instead, truth had allowed them to see each other clearly. Months passed. Seattle changed seasons. Rain softened into pale spring. Maya's apartment grew brighter, not because it was new, but because she had removed everything that made it feel borrowed from her own life. She bought a second-hand bookshelf and filled it with design books she had once convinced herself were unnecessary. She replaced the cracked phone. She paid down what she could, negotiated what she could not, and learned to look at her finances without shame. Shame had been one of Ethan's last fingerprints. He had made her feel embarrassed for being responsible, embarrassed for asking where money went, embarrassed for wanting stability, embarrassed for being tired. It took time for Maya to understand that those were not flaws. They were signals. They were the parts of her that had been trying to save her before she knew she needed saving. Her mother noticed the change before Maya did. It was not dramatic. Maya did not suddenly become loud or hard or suspicious of every kindness. She still loved beauty. She still believed in tenderness. She still cried at songs sometimes and bought flowers from the corner market when she could afford them. But she no longer confused being loving with being endlessly available for harm. Her no became calmer. Her yes became more honest. Her silence no longer meant surrender. One evening, almost a year after Chicago, Maya received another email from the graduate program. She opened it standing in the kitchen, expecting nothing because hope still made her careful. She had been accepted. For a while, she simply stared at the screen. Then she sat on the floor the way she had the night she discovered the wedding invitation. But this time, her body was not folding under betrayal. It was making room for relief. Her mother came over within 20 minutes, still wearing house slippers because she had left so quickly. They cried, laughed, and ordered takeout from the Thai place Maya loved, but rarely bought during the Ethan years because every unnecessary expense had felt like theft from some future emergency. That night, Maya opened the old folder on her laptop labeled Future Studio. The files were still there. Some of the designs looked naive now, Some made her smile. At the top was the line she had typed years earlier: "I want to make beautiful things and build a life that belongs to me." Maya read it again. This time, it did not feel like a dream waiting for permission. It felt like an instruction. Ethan's story did not end as cleanly as people might want. Men like him do not always fall to their knees and become better. Sometimes they simply search for the next person willing to believe the performance. But his world had narrowed. His lies had records now. His charm had witnesses against it. He could no longer use Maya's name, money, or silence as shelter. And Maya, most importantly, stopped measuring her healing by his punishment. At first, she had wanted updates. She wanted to know whether he was suffering, whether he regretted it, whether the people who once praised him now saw what she saw. That was natural. When someone has taken years from you, part of you wants proof that the universe noticed. But over time, the need faded. Not because Ethan deserved peace, because Maya did. Her victory was not the ruined wedding, though. That moment had given truth a microphone. It was not the ring sinking into the river, though, that had given her grief a place to go. It was not even the signed divorce papers, though they mattered. Her victory was quieter and more demanding. It was waking up and not checking whether Ethan had messaged. It was buying groceries based on what she wanted to cook. It was taking a Sunday off without feeling guilty that she was not earning money to cover someone else's mistake. It was telling a client her rate and not apologizing for it. It was hearing her mother's warnings in memory and no longer feeling defensive, only grateful. It was learning that love should not require a woman to disappear in order for a man to feel important. Years later, if you had asked Maya about the wedding in Chicago, she would not describe the flowers first, or the ring, or Ethan's face when he saw her. She would describe the moment before she spoke, when she stood in that beautiful room in a uniform meant to make her invisible, and realized she was not afraid of being seen anymore. That was the real turning point. For so long she had hidden the truth from herself because it hurt too much. She had hidden the debt, hidden the doubts, hidden the loneliness of being married to someone who only came close when he needed something. She had hidden the warnings, the signs, the exhaustion, the small humiliations that piled up until they looked like a life. In Chicago, she stopped hiding. And once she stopped hiding, Ethan's lies had nowhere left to stand. There is a kind of heartbreak that does not only break your heart, it breaks the story you told yourself about who you were. Maya had believed she was loyal, patient, strong, and loving. After Ethan, she had to learn that she was still all of those things. The problem was never that she loved deeply. The problem was that she had offered deep love to someone who treated it like a resource to spend. That distinction saved her. Because if she had decided love itself was the mistake, Ethan would have taken even more. He would have taken her tenderness and left bitterness in its place. But Maya refused to let him define the meaning of her own heart. She became wiser, yes, more careful, slower to trust, but not empty. And that is what people like Ethan never understand. They think walking away with someone's money means they won. They think being forgiven again and again means they are powerful. They think a loyal person is weak because loyalty keeps giving them chances. But loyalty is only weakness when it is chained to someone unworthy. Once it breaks free, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes loyalty to truth, loyalty to dignity, loyalty to the future that was waiting underneath all that pain. Maya did eventually open her studio, not immediately. Real rebuilding took time. There were loans to repair classes, to finish, confidence to grow back in uneven places. But she did it. She rented a modest office with tall windows and painted one wall a deep green that reminded her of Seattle after rain. She worked with small businesses, independent artists, women starting over, people who came to her with dreams that felt too fragile to say loudly. She understood fragile dreams. On the first day the studio officially opened, Her mother brought flowers and placed them on Maya's desk. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, just flowers, a long hug, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a daughter come home to herself. Maya kept one framed piece on the wall behind her desk. It was not a wedding photo, not a degree, not even her first major design award. It was a simple print she made herself, black letters on white paper, clean and centered. Love should not cost you yourself. Clients sometimes noticed it and nodded without asking. Some sentences do not need explanation. So if you are listening to Maya's story and part of it feels familiar, maybe not the wedding, maybe not the dramatic reveal, but the slow erosion, the constant giving, the excuses you make for someone who keeps taking, then remember this. Warning signs rarely arrive as thunder. Often they arrive as a tight feeling in your chest, a question you are afraid to ask, a receipt you cannot explain, a promise that sounds beautiful because it has never been kept. Do not ignore the quiet truth just because the lie is louder. Sacrifice can be beautiful. Patience can be beautiful. Standing beside someone through hardship can be one of the deepest forms of love. But love is not supposed to make you smaller year after year. It is not supposed to feed on your dreams and call that devotion. It is not supposed to turn your future into collateral for someone else's performance. Maya learned that painfully. But when the truth finally came, she did not beg for a place in Ethan's life. She walked into the room where he had tried to erase her and said her own name. Then she walked out free. And maybe that is the part worth remembering most. Not the scandal, not the shock, not the ruined wedding. The freedom. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is not fight to be chosen by someone who betrayed them. Sometimes the bravest thing is to stop waiting at the edge of someone else's lie, gather the proof of your own pain, and choose the life that still belongs to you. If you were Maya, would you have had the strength to walk into that wedding and tell the truth in front of everyone? And if you were Isabella, standing there in the dress, seconds away from marrying a man who had already lied about an entire wife, what would you have done? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, stay with us for more stories where hidden truths finally come into the light, and where the people who were underestimated find the courage to reclaim their lives.